I'd love to introduce Sarah Nooravi. So Sarah is a senior financial analyst at Snap Inc. with over 4 years of experience in the field of data science and analytics. With a focus in marketing analytics, she has a history of delivering innovative marketing tools to help drive better business decisions in the entertainment, social media, and gaming industries. She is also passionate about teaching and giving back to the community. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to bring up Sarah Nooravi on our virtual stage. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for having me. Hello, everyone.
Hello,
Danny,
hello.
that was an amazing presentation. Good night to you.
I know. I hope Danny gets some sleep. So if I didn't mention this earlier, Danny's in Australia, and it takes 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning for him. So I hope Danny, you tune out and get some sleep. Unless you want to stick around for the rest of the conference. But at this point, Sarah, I know you're going to talk about something so relevant for us right now. It's all about networking during a pandemic, networking like a pro. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off stage. We'll share your screen for you and let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. All right. Hopefully this will tie into a lot of some of the concepts that Danny already brought up. So hopefully there'll be a common theme here. So today we're going to talk about networking for the next 10, 15 minutes. And the title of the talk is Networking Like a Pro During a Pandemic. But I really hope that the concepts that we talk about here will be useful in or out of a pandemic and at any point in your career. So this is, let's see. So let's figure out some technical stuff. Okay, cool. So the general talk is going to kind of cover what is networking, why is it important? Hopefully this shouldn't be like totally new, but towards the end, we'll get into how to do it better and maybe rethinking the way we think about networking that hopefully will be very insightful and refreshing for you all. So let's start with what is it? Why is it important? So really, succinctly, I guess, or in a nutshell, I came up with this this definition that hopefully we can all agree on, that really what networking allows you to do is expand the realm of opportunities to much more than you can achieve alone. And the quote that comes to mind when we're thinking about networking is, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I think the most relevant, I think, example of something that has been achieved with not just using one person, but kind of leveraging the network is kind of Kate putting on this conference, right? So not only has she kind of done this in such a quick amount of time, but if we think about how long she's actually really worked to put this together, it's been years of developing relationships that she's been able to leverage to kind of put this on. So great job, Kate. Shout out to her for putting this on and for allowing us to have the stage to kind of talk about some of these very relevant topics. So moving on from kind of what it is, why it's important, I think that should be very, very relevant and very obvious to most of us, right? So actually leading up to this talk, I asked some of my colleagues and friends, you know, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's navigating their networking journey, or maybe just starting out? And I got a range of, it's a very broad questions, and I got a range of answers. Things like, be genuine, think about what you have to offer. Others said, you know, you need to persevere. You know, you're going to face a lot of rejections along the way. Others said, you know, don't be afraid. You never know who you'll meet or what you'll learn. Still others said, and I actually found this one shocking when I first heard it, attract attention, do something controversial, help yourself gain exposure. And really, if you look at the lineup for today's conference and you look at each one of these speakers, they've done this, right? They've created a brand for themselves on LinkedIn and on YouTube, various channels, to kind of create a network around them and bring the network to them by talking about it and engaging with their communities, right? So look to our speakers as great ways of building networks. Others of my friends said, you know, I don't know, I haven't needed to network, or maybe I don't like people. Fair. And then the last one is, you know, it's a numbers game. Reach out to as many people as possible. Now, when I looked at these responses, I really thought, you know, these are all very valid pieces of advice, but really then it begged the question of, what is the goal, right? So when I heard, you know, it's a numbers game, reach out to as many people as possible, I thought, wow, I would never tell someone to do that. But depending on the goal that you have, that actually might be the best strategy. So really here, the key takeaway is define the goal, and that'll define the strategy. right? And so we think about two different types of goals, really. Like we can bucket them into the short term, very obvious ones, I want that job or I want that opportunity, or the longer term goals. I'm in this domain now. I want to connect with people who can share the similar interests. Maybe I can learn from them, right? And so two different types of goals. And in this presentation, I hope to focus on the latter, right? Let's optimize for long-term goals. What does that really mean? It means optimizing for relationship building or optimizing for connection. So what does that really do to someone who's thinking about networking when they're thinking about optimizing for connection rather than a transactional, hey, I want, the short-term goals? Well, it really now allows you to think about the other person, right? It's not about what you have to gain anymore. It's about also what you have to give. And maybe do I have anything in common with that person? Do I see myself being friends with them or colleagues with them into the future, right? Do we have common interests? What are their goals? What do they want, right? So it makes you start thinking about this relationship as less of a take and more of a give take, right? And so here I'm going to get into 6 tips. The last one is more maybe 7 tips, but 6 major ones that I hope you guys find very insightful. So the first one is really, tip number 1 is reaching out to dormant ties. So when we think about networking, it's kind of awkward, right? Like having to reach out to random strangers and really, not understand, maybe overcoming the anxiety of, talking to people that you've never talked to before. But really here, the first one should be low-hanging fruit, right? Reaching out to existing connections that you already have. So these are otherwise called dormant ties. And so when I think about this, I also think about kind of the Facebook notifications that I get to mark milestones that I've had with people, 5 or 10 years of having friendship with that person. And then I'm like, oh my God, like, do I really want to, I haven't talked to this person in so long. But think about what's happened over the past 5 or 10 years. They've changed jobs, they've changed locations, they've created their own sub-networks. Rekindling that friendship might lead to a totally different relationship today than it did 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And so people you met in high school and college and prior workplace and prior jobs that you've had might be a really, really great place to start in your networking journey. Tip number 2 is that if you're going to go outside of your circle, instead maybe try going through your circle. So what do I mean by this? So I'm going to bring up some of the speakers. So if I wanted to know how to make some amazing memes or anything to do with kind of what Danny Ma just spoke about, maybe I would reach out to him and ask him for that advice. If I wanted to know how to maybe become an entrepreneur, I talked to Lillian. If I wanted some experience, some firsthand experience of what it was like to build my own conference, I talked to Kate. But then if there was someone outside of my network, maybe like Ashley, who works at Deloitte, maybe I was curious about maybe joining her team, I would leverage someone who's already in my network, Bo, and I'd say, hey, do you mind introducing us? There's several advantages to this, is that you're probably going to get a better interaction with that person. There's already a mutual connection, so you're not a stranger. And you're probably likely, and in my case, I was able to leverage a friend of mine who got me connected to a lawyer, and she gave me many hours of free advice, which you maybe otherwise wouldn't have gotten. So LinkedIn does this very nicely for us, right? So it tells us the proximity of where we are relative to other people in our network. And we're able to now say, okay, this person's a friend, this person's a friend of a friend, and it allows it makes it a little bit easier to do that. Tip number 3, avoid networking events. Again, this leans more towards the transactional type, the very short-term goals that we had. So the handing out business cards, handing out resumes, really not aiming for long-term connection and relationship building. So instead, maybe try and find some events where, things that you're already interested in that you can start very natural conversations with. And if you're looking for where to find these events, many of us are posting on LinkedIn. Maybe attending this conference is a great start, right? Try connecting to people. And this leads me to my next point, is get personal, be personable, right? So people with high IQ and low EQ aren't the people that you want to associate with and, go grab a drink with after work. But if you can find commonality and be personable, and work on the social skills, right? Danny talked about that, like having a very well-rounded soft skills. Those are super important to your success in not only your data science career, but in general, right? And so here, I think about how many company-sponsored events happen, and happy hours and events that they put on, and most people will say, nah, I'm gonna opt out of that. And when you opt out of that, you're also opting out of the relationship that you can have with a salesperson, a relationship you can have with someone on marketing, a relationship you can have with someone, maybe even on your data team that you haven't talked to. So you miss out on a lot when you don't attend these events. And what these events actually help make easy, what they allow you to do is really bond over something non-work related, right? And so you get to share an experience together that you'll be able to talk about afterwards and build rapport and build social capital that you can, later on leverage. So tip number 5, quality over quantity. Oh my God, I can't stress this enough. So these are real messages. I blocked out who they are, but these are real messages that I get to my inbox. And it's all about, hey, can you help me get this, right? Like, and this goes back to the numbers approach, right? It's like, yeah, if you send out enough emails, maybe someone will respond and you'll get maybe, some traction there. But really, in terms of long-term relationship building, this isn't the way to go. And most of these messages I don't respond to because it's not a win-win for both sides. It's actually a lose-lose because I can't give you a quality recommendation and you don't get the quality recommendation. So in relation to this, actually, the way to do it better, the way to frame this a little bit better, is to use the 51-49 rule. And we all have our different varying opinions on Gary Vee, but I love what he says here, right? He wants to be remembered for the 51-49, meaning that he's giving more than he's getting. And so approaching things from a mindset of what do I have to give, and really approaching the relationship with generosity and what that other person, how you can help that other person in all of your relationships actually ends up helping you, and you end up more successful when people see that you are being generous with your time. So talking about time, the next point that I have to make is really that, when should you be networking? And so I got this from Indeed, and it says the most common time for using your network is during the job search. And notice the operative word here, using, right? So that means the building phase happened long before the leveraging and the using of the network. So when should you be building your network, you say? Well, my advice to you is that you should always be connecting. ABC, always be connecting. I took this from a sales thing, always be closing, always be connecting. You guys get the point. So here are some resources. You guys, I'll share these slides with you. I used a couple of TED Talks to kind of that I found very, very insightful. And some of these books are actually very amazing in helping you build those soft skills and understand how to be vulnerable, put yourself out there, connect with people. And so does this sound like a lot of common sense? Maybe, maybe that all of this, you're like, Sarah, hey, this is a lot of, like, I already know all of this, but not all common sense is common practice. So I urge you to take some of the insights that we talked about today and leverage that into the networking events that you guys have today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your talk. You're getting so many great questions and comments. I'm going to remove your screen for a minute. Yes, always be connecting. I absolutely love that. Anyone who's, kind of engaging in the comments right now, you guys are doing it right, because there are hundreds and thousands of people engaging with each other. It's a great place to really connect and talk. I loved all of your tips, Sarah. I did learn a couple of new ones, and I agree. It's not a numbers game, right? It's really quality over quantity, because you can send out 10,000 invitations of, the sort that you shared, and yeah, they're not going to go very far. And I think a lot of the other prior speakers can vouch for that as well.
Right. Well, like also, if you're optimizing for the short-term goal, you may get that, but then you're limited right after that. But say a connection and a relationship that you built, you never know how that'll come in handy later on. And if it ends right at the transaction, then you never get to see the fruits of where that relationship could have helped you in the future. So, and then also always be connecting. I mean, you never know who, oh, sorry, we're probably over time. I could continue on forever. So
I wanted to just take one question from the audience, because I think it's really important. And speaking of time, is how do you overcome hesitation to network due to embarrassment? So some people might be shy. So any quick tips that you can share with Sneha?
I would honestly recommend read Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. She talks about vulnerability, and she talks about how, like, when people describe what their most vulnerable moments are, they talk about putting themselves out there or trying something new. And really, those are the most courageous acts that you can do. And so rethinking the way you think about vulnerability could be very great. And so I recommend that book.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. If you have time to answer people's comments directly on LinkedIn, please go ahead and do so, because
Awesome.
there are a lot of comments and questions on this. At this point, I'm going to thank you again, Sarah.